wanted to maybe be a veterinary surgeon or a doctor. It obviously wasn't made for me. I can't imagine doing something different. And I see the benefit, the great benefit of having the ability to sing, because it's so much more than just being a singer. I was put together with Alan again. That is the only song that he produced on that album, which is African Dream. But I don't think any of us had a clue that this song was going to become the big song that it did.
Welcome to Crossing the Line, a weekly podcast in which we talk to interesting guests about their life stories and about the problems facing our country, our continent, and our world. My name is Ryland Fisher and I'm your host. I'd like to thank MobiLearn for their technical support to make this podcast possible. My guest today is, how do I describe you? Songstress supreme, the voice of our nation and our continent, Vicky Sampson. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's very exciting to be here with you.
Thank you. I'd like to start off, by allowing my guests to introduce themselves a little bit. So, and then I like to go way back. So maybe
I do.
Yeah. So maybe we can go even a little bit way back. Talk about, like where you grew up, and the kind of impact that your growing up years had on you, kind of eventually, Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that we will be talking about that more, but your and my friendship goes back to, if you're way back at it, as you say, when I was in my youth and you were still, in your youth, from Hanover Park days, growing up in Hanover Park, and our time at the youth club and everything. And so basically, for those people who might not know, I grew up in Hanover Park. My mom got us a house there when I was 11 years old. And this came from, my mother was a domestic, my late mom now, who you know very well. Right? My mother was a domestic housekeeper and worked at various families, Kirstenbosch, Bishop's Court, Weinberg, for some families during that time. And then she got us a house when I was 11 in Hanover Park, which was the first place we went to was in Hanover Park, which is close to Vanguard Drive. And that's kind of where I spent a part of my younger days.
So that was before you kind of lived close to the terminus?
Yes.
Okay.
That was before, but by that stage already, I think the Hanover Park Youth Club was formed in 1979.
Yeah.
And I became one of the founding members of Hanover Park Youth alongside you and a whole bunch of other people, from the community. And essentially what happened is I left Cape Town at the age of 18 after having entered in a competition, Follow That Star, which was an SABC show. I didn't win, but I was chosen as an overall guest on the winners, they were called the Soft Shoes. And I was flown to Johannesburg in that year, 1983, to go and then perform at the at the Soft Shoe Special, Special. And that, also in that same year, I had my first cabaret performance in Swaziland at a club called the Why Not, which was notorious and the only club of its kind in Africa. I worked with a band called Crossroads. I essentially went to do cabaret. And that was the beginning of another journey that then took me thereafter to Botswana, where I went also ostensibly to perform as a cabaret artist for 2 weeks. Ended up connecting with the impresario who was there at the time, the late David Bestman. And Dave then suggested that I join the band, which was at the Oasis Motel. I stayed with them for about, I was there for like 4 months, nearly in that place, 3.5, 4 months, enjoyed it thoroughly. And then I ended up in Johannesburg in somewhere beginning of 1989. I also then ended up in Mabatu at the Mabatu Sun Hotel, and I took over from Sophia Foster with the band called Love Supreme with Chris Schilder. He was Chris Schilder at the time, the late Monty Weber, Andre Edrumse. And I sang with them for about 3 months. was fired from the band. It's a story for another day, maybe, because I went away for a weekend, never came back in time. And they fired me, and I ended up in Joburg then in 89, sometime around about April. Not 89, 84, actually, 1984. All these things were happening. So that was straight after my Swaziland experience, Botswana experience. Then I ended up joining a band in Lesotho in 84 as well, April 80, May 84. In fact, it was the 10th of May that I walked straight into a gig at the Msiri Casino Hotel with the man and the band who would then become my father, part of my children, Trevor Dongini, bass player. We ended up in Joburg in 89, and that's where a whole bunch of other things started happening then. I did a lot of session work, radio sessions, television ads and jingles, and that led to me collaborating with Mark Alex. They invited me to come and feature in one of their videos, Never Never, and the record company Tusk heard me, saw me, and offered me my first record deal in 92. And of course, released my first album, Shine, which had the hit song Love Will Shine on You. And in 95, I was still with them. I went to travel to London for 7 weeks, where we recorded the album Zai, of which African Dream was the first single. And then that became like the story of my life. And my destiny was the African Dream. And many, many corporate shows later, many traveling around, not just Africa, but internationally as well, with the African Dream. It was an amazing time of my life. 96, the album and song was nominated at the second South African Music Awards. We won 4 awards out of 5, including Best Female Artist, Best Video, etc. And the success and just the journey of the song in my life, Ryland, has had such a huge impact on me as a person coming from the Cape Flats, coming from an activist background, actually, where is still even now, African Dream will be celebrating 30 years this November of existence. And the African Dream has become such an integral part of who I am and of my belief and my hope and my inspiration, not just for South Africa, but for our continent itself. And I'm finding now at this stage of life, the African Dream is more relevant than ever, because where is the African Dream? Is it still relevant? Are we ever going to see it,
I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I wanted to go back again and to the youth days, and if you reflect on those days, do you think that there are lessons that young people of today can learn from the way we used to organize young people in those days?
No, absolutely. I think it's a consciousness, I suppose, and then I think our youth today are affected by different dilemmas, if you may. So many other different dilemmas that young people are facing now. In our time, it was most certainly, it was apartheid. It was that big taboo. It was that big horror, the great horror that we were addressing at the time as young people. But we had such a consciousness about our freedom, about our space, about our identity. Who are we as a nation, and where are we going, and when is this freedom going to come? So for me, it was a driving force behind a lot of the things that I then went on to do later in my life. And now when I look at young people, I wonder if they have an idea or a desire as strongly as we had as the youth of those decades, to contribute towards our society, and not that it's just become such a self-promoting thing, all about me and I, but the consciousness and how they are impacted now by the things that we are facing now as South Africans, as citizens of this country and of the world. And I think their struggle has become, there's definitely still struggles, but I think it's kind of morphed into a whole bunch of other things. I think it's much more challenging, in essence, today to be a young person in today's world than it was for us,
Yeah. So now I still apply a lot of lessons of things that I learned in the days of struggle. I always tell people that a lot of the way I manage people is based on the way we organize people in those days.
Yes.
With respect and so on. I mean, are there lessons from the struggle that you still apply in your daily life today?
No, absolutely. Those lessons would be from a sense of, firstly, self-awareness, which is a great self-respect, I suppose, in a way, all because of my background and where we grew up. And we know that things were never that easy growing up in a Hanover Park or in a Bontebel or Middelburg. We had our own stresses and our own challenges. It was always a socio-economic thing. Oftentimes, with me not having really had a father growing up for most of my life, that is still a key problem that we face in today's society. But some of the lessons I learned would definitely be that respect thing, just the way you treat your elders firstly. But I think that stems from from a personal perspective and how one regards oneself. And I feel that at this time of my life, it stood me in such good stead having that courtesy of not just yourself, but about your community and how you treat other people. It's very much the way I still handle myself in today's life. And I think it's sadly lacking a perspective of young people and the way they firstly address their elders now. There doesn't seem to be that same, I don't know what it is. It's a bit of a moral decay thing going on, and I think it's something that we can look back on possibly. What did we get right then, even though we had so much more stress and stuff? How did we, because we always looked up to our elders and it was a big thing. And our teachers even, within our education system. My teachers in my school, I mean, if my teacher said something, that at times maybe was a bit like not so, a bit unkind or controversial, yes, there was always one or two children in the class who would get stared in that. But it was a respect, because this is a person that is there to guide us and to lead us.
Okay. You spoke a little bit about your father. Maybe, I know your parents got divorced when you were 12, yeah?
Yeah.
But maybe tell us a bit about your father, because your father, you probably take after your father in terms of the music side.
Well, my dad in his day was known as South Africa's Johnny Mathis. Victor Sampson, that's who he was. He actually sang exactly like Johnny Mathis. And it was just a difficult journey for him, because if things were bad decades later for the music industry and for being a performer or an artist of color, it certainly was even more challenging in his time. He traveled with the Golden City Dixies and with the Cape Town Follies and that. I think they even went as far as the then Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. But it wasn't a lucrative thing. It wasn't a thing that there was really a future for an artist of color at the time in this country. But my dad passed away very suddenly in 1999. But I imagine that through the years, he would always be cutting out articles when I was in the paper, or he'd watch me on television. And we never had that very close relationship as close as I had with my mom. But my dad was always somehow there in the background. And now when I look at my career and how things have panned out for me, in a way, sometimes it's like I can almost see his face and I can hear his voice, somewhere in the background, and that sense of pride, because I know he was very proud of me, even though he didn't often say it. I kind of think at this point in time, yes, it's definitely a case of I'm stepping into the shoes of my dad with that legacy in mind.
So, I want to talk a little bit about myself. I'm not supposed to do it on the show.
Please.
But I play a little bit of guitar and sang a little bit. And so my daughter, my youngest daughter, when she was growing up, I used to always play guitar to her, and I would sing with her, and she would sing along.
Yeah.
And I made sure that she got proper guitar training.
Yeah.
And proper musical training, and she's also a musician nowadays. Did you have a little bit of that with your dad growing up? Did you ever sing with him?
My dad bought me my first guitar when I was it was not too long before my parents actually got divorced. My father he could play by ear. He could play the guitar, he could play the piano, he could play the flute, and very well for someone that had no formal training. So he bought me my guitar, but he never really taught me any skills, to be honest. it wasn't that kind of relationship somehow. And it was one of my regrets, in my later years, as I then pursued this career. I thought, yes, why didn't my father teach me, to play the way he did by ear? And so I never had that thing with him, sadly. But if I look at who he sounded like, Johnny Mathis for me became a big role model, even in the way I sing today, and if nothing else, at least he bought me a guitar. And I think his intention was for me to study it or whatever. I can still play up until today. I can play a few chords, like race chords, as they say. I think for me, it became a bit of a fear, actually, funnily enough, Ryland, to learn to play an instrument. I don't know what that is and what that's about.
Yeah. So, I mean, you spoke about the tough time that your dad had in the industry. And it's a tough industry. And yet you still pursued a career in the same industry that you saw was treating him so badly.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a thing that I chose.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So when did you know that this is what you actually wanted to do?
I think probably after that first competition that my auntie entered me in, which was on the town centre. I think I was 15. And she entered me in a talent competition there, and I won first prize. I won I think it was a half a lamb or something as a prize. A half a scalp, a half a lamb. But I won that competition, and I sang a song by Barbara Streisand, Run Wild. And I think that was when the first inkling of this light went on for me. That, hey, maybe, because I always wanted to be a doctor, actually, or a veterinary surgeon. Education-wise, I didn't even complete my standard 8, so I didn't get my JC. But I was always a very keen student when it came to languages, Afrikaans and English. I wish that they'd learned us isiXhosa in school, at least, Imagine that. But languages was always my thing. Poetry, composition, and then I loved history. I still love history, even though a lot of the history is very questionable. And geography, those were my favorite subjects. And so as I now look at my life, I think, wow, what an incredible thing it is that God gave me this gift of music. And I love it so much. And it's the only thing I've ever done since I left 1983. I've managed to sustain myself through the art of music. But if you were to ask me at the age of 12 what I wanted to do, it wouldn't have been music. It was never a thought. It was never a choice that I made. I think music chose me, and I just followed. And I mean, I was bold. I had no fear at the age of 18. So I don't know. Who knows what might have happened if music hadn't chosen me.
So, I mean, you spoke a little bit about your career and how you recorded and finally recorded African Dream. But I mean, you had maybe not as big hits, but I mean, shined it reasonably well.
Yeah.
But African Dream obviously becomes the song that defines you. When you recorded that song, did you think that it could become such a big hit?
No, I don't think any of us at the record company even did. Because as I found out afterwards, the song was actually written for me by Alan Lazar. Alan produced and wrote many of the songs on my first album, including Love Will Shine On You. And I think by the time 95 came along, I was put together with Alan again. And funnily enough, that is the only song that he produced on that album and gave me, which is African Dream. But I don't think any of us had a clue, even after the song was released, that the song was going to become the big song that it did. And now it's such a miracle for me in my life. I mean, every artist's dream, I'm sure, would be to have at least one song, that put them on the map. And sometimes it's been mostly a blessing, but I suppose at times it's been a bit of a challenge because people, would say, oh, our word, is that the only song she's ever sung? And I'm like, I can't help it if all the corporates wanted me on the events. Every event, big event, this African Dream had to be there. So what a blessing. But most certainly, I don't think we were prepared for what was going to happen with the song.
You know, you spoke a bit about signing with Tusk, and I seem to remember there being a bit of an issue in terms of the contract, and you wanting to get out of the contract and not being able to get out of the contract, and almost your career almost been paralyzed for quite a few years.
No, I had no idea really about a contract. I never really had essentially a management team around me, essentially during that period of my life. So everything I learned by just jumping in and just doing it. For me, the sense of unhappiness came around the time after African Dream was released because there were some great opportunities. You know that I performed it at the opening and closing ceremonies of the AFCON in '96, and Bafana won that year. But I had various ideas like marketing strategy around getting the song out there and so on. And I felt a bit unhappy at the time about how the marketing people were managing this process. And because I had a show where we launched the Carousel. We launched the Carousel Hotel. Can't remember what year that was, 96 maybe? Yes. And before that happened, I said, why is my stock, is my CD available there? What's happening? Can we do like a big promo thing? And it's like sometimes they just never heard me as an artist because, oh, it's like you must just be the artist. But if you look at most creative people, they are visionaries. We see certain things that normally other people of society won't see and won't notice. And I think there was a sense of unhappiness also when African Dream, without my knowledge or without my consent, was actually used to license the lotto. That was the thing that actually I wasn't very happy about because I happened to find out about it by mistake via the choir that went and performed and rehearsed the song. And I was like, what is this? I didn't know about this. And the next thing, African Dream became the theme song for the lottery for like a year. And financially, I just felt that it paid some money, but it should have set me up as a situation like that or an opportunity like that. And it was just like the artist wasn't heard, wasn't really seen. Decisions were because I didn't write the song. So I guess it wasn't really my decision, but I felt at the time that they could have consulted me and they didn't. But we mostly had, it was quite a journey being a recording artist, and just at times also with the product not being available in store, I would constantly get like a message or something. Vicky, we were here at this musical or wherever, or look and listen at the time. Your album's not here. It would be a constant problem for me, which was actually, that was the availability distribution. But I mean, I can't say in looking back that we sold 1 million records or whatever, because we didn't. I didn't make my money via royalties. Essentially, I think I did take an advance at some point in the beginning. But where I have earned my money is through the live corporate thing, with African Dream.
You spoke about Johnny Mathis as being one of the people who kind of influenced you or who kind of became a role model for you. Are there any other people that you think of who...
Many, so many. I mean, I think for me, one of my personal highlights of my career was in 1993 when I was selected to be the supporting act as they called us, for Al Jarreau when he came to South Africa. And I remember when I found out the news, it was like I was blown away. And I remember sitting on the flight, because I was still living in Joburg then, on the plane coming down to Cape Town. And we'd had a meeting in Joburg. And I met Al Jarreau personally. He was in the record company. And I still have photos somewhere. There's a photo of him and I actually probably on my website, as well as on my one Facebook profile. There's a picture of him and I. And I remember flying down after getting the news, and the excitement was like tangible. And then I had a very special moment with Al. It just was still the Greenpoint Stadium at that time. And we were sitting somewhere in the bowels of the stadium and somewhere downstairs near the dressing room area. And Al had brought his towels from his hotel room. And we were sitting like this, and he was smoking a cigarette and sipping a glass of red wine and asking me and telling me about how he prepares before he goes on. And he warms up for like an hour, he does vocal training exercises, and rolled up the towel and said, this is how I relax my vocal cords, and put it on the floor and went to lie down there. And that was like such a magical moment. It's like, I can't believe I didn't have that recorded, because it was a very specific point. He was definitely one of my greatest role models, vocally and musically. And then, of course, there was later, after that, in the early 90s, I was introduced to an artist also called Olita Adams. And she used to sing with Tears for Fears. She did a hit song with him, Woman in Chains. She's been a very big influence. Randy Crawford, of course, has been one of my greatest. Anita Baker, Tina Turner, Billy Joel, Elton John, Annie Lennox. So I've had quite a varied bunch of people that I looked up to here in South Africa. Later on, I absolutely love the music of Claire Johnston and Mango Groove. Always been a huge fan of these. And then there's Tandiswa Mazwai from Bongo Muffin, the late TK. She was an awesome, awesome singer. Lebo from Bongo, not what was that group? Boom Shaka.
Shaka.
Yes. And some of the greats, like I've had the privilege of meeting and sharing the stage with Prakaifa Semenya, Letambuli, Brayu Masikela, with, the one person I never got to meet was Mama Miriam. And so these are some of my South African role models, and within the continent itself, one of the greatest fans has always been Ishmaelo, Yusu Ndur, Angelique Kidjo. That most of those artists helped shape. Shirley Bassey would probably be the original, going back to when I was about 7. She was my very first vocal female artist that I was like trying to sing like. Yeah. I got to see her perform live when she came in 1997 at the Sandbank Arena. Yeah, that was
That must have been special. Yeah.
It was very awesome.
So you've collaborated with many artists over the years. So please tell me about your favorite collaborations.
Wow. Well, some of the collaboration, it could have been a collaboration, but it didn't become a collaboration. I felt let down in 1993 when Peebo Bryson came to South Africa. I think it was Miss South Africa or something. And it was me and Mark Alex and a whole bunch of other artists who were like opening acts or whatever, part of the whole extravaganza at Sun City. And I was like, why didn't Tusk get me to sing at least one of those big songs with him? A Whole New World or Beauty and the Beast. What they did is they flew out this British woman who nobody knew and some American girl to come and sing the songs with him. And yet we were on the same label. That was one of the things that I remember now that made me very sad. Why didn't they think of using, because I could have sung with him. As far as collaboration is concerned, I'm looking, Mark Alex, of course, was one of the bands that I did collaborate with. Karen Zoid and I, a couple of years ago, we did a YouTube on her show, Zoid Africa. We did a collaboration with African Dream. I've worked with various artists in, like when they did there was some campaign or other, a couple of campaigns that I've been one of the artists, and most of those campaigns have been related to our nation and how it was against gender-based violence, the one. But if I were to collaborate with someone now on a South African level, I have collaborated with an artist I'm actually seeing him on my event tomorrow morning. His name is Mahlatsi Roko. He's from Polokwane, and we wrote a song together called You Are the Light, beginning of last year. So we will be performing that tomorrow morning. I've collaborated with Ladysmith Black Mambazo. That's such a vibe. So I've had some really awesome moments, but not a collaboration to the extent that I think that's still coming, Ryland. Like a really great collaboration or two. And in fact, I am now collaborating with an artist. His name is Jack Stone, that I met a few years ago. Him and I are busy writing. We've written a song together. And actually, when I come back from my travels, God willing, next week, I'm going to get back into studio. I've been a little under the weather, health-wise, and we need to go and finish the track. The song is called Honest. I'm very excited about it. But I've always wanted to collab with like a Jimmy Nevis or a Craig Lucas. And maybe that's still coming. I don't know. I hope so.
Okay. And so you've also met and performed in front of some important people. One person who comes to mind is, of course, Nelson Mandela. Maybe tell us a little bit about that experience.
Wow. Well, my first that experience, I think you might have been in the stadium that day. Ryland at Athlone Stadium in 1993. Sure. And Alan Busak, Dr. Busak was on the stage behind me. Cheryl Corrales. I think it was Penny. What was her surname? She was Miss South Africa at the time.
Penny Haynes.
No, she, I can't remember her surname now.
No, Penny Haynes, I think it's a swimmer.
No, but so it was a whole bunch of people on the stage behind me, including Madiba. And I, the worst with you, one of the, I don't know how I got it, but God must have been really protecting me. The Thursday before that event, which was on the Sunday at Athlone Stadium, I had just had nodules removed from my vocal cords because my voice was, I could barely speak. And the surgeon, my ENT said, Vicky, you're not to talk, you're not to sing, you must stay silent for at least 2-3 weeks. And then I was now forgot about this event on the Sunday. There was no ways that I wasn't going to not come. Flew down to Cape Town, and poof, on the Sunday there I was on stage. It never even occurred to me. I completely forgot about my voice, the nodules, the operation. I sang like a lark. And the next thing, my Deepa got up from behind me, and he came and he put out his hands to me, and he took my hands and he congratulated me and thanked me. And the next thing, he kissed me. But as I leaned into kissing, I kissed him on the mouth. And like, oh my gosh. And the next day, it was the front page of the headline of the newspaper the next day. I'm still trying to find that picture. But that was my first meet and greet with Tata. And I think then later in 1997, I saw him again at another event in Joburg, and it was a similar thing. There's a picture on my website, actually, where he's holding me like this, and I'm standing right here, and then I'm kissing or leaning towards his cheek again. That was front page of the Star. I've had my moments with him. Then I met him again in 97 when we was bidding for the Olympics at our civic here in Cape Town. And there's a picture of Madiba and I that also made the press, funnily enough, where he's doing his Madiba jive on stage and I'm next to him with African Dream, of course. I then performed in 2000 and something at his 90-something, I think it was his 92nd birthday at Joburg Stadium. And that was an amazing gig. It was called Father of Our Nation. And Madiba came, and that was the last time physically. I remember that after that show, Ryland, it was me, it was Jennifer Jones, Judith Sipuma, Tandiswa Mazwai. We were all on stage. Vicky Sampson was the musical director. We had the Soweto choir. It was a big, big, big thing. And Madiba was seated in the corner with Mama Grasha and that. And I remember as the gig finished, I was like, oh, I have to go and hug him. I have to go. And I ran upstage, back down there. And as I was running, Zelda Lagranji and Mama Grasha were walking with him to his car. And I ran across him, and Mama Grasha looked back, and Zelda looked, and Zelda said, "Hi, Vicky, how are you?" And she said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Please, can I hug Tata?" And then he was getting into the car, and they said, "Sure, come." And then she said, Mama Grasha still said, "Tata, Vicky Sampson wants to give you a hug." And then he turned, and I can remember he was getting there now that time. Yeah. Turned. And he looked and he gave me the smile, and then I hugged him like this. And that was the last time I actually physically saw him. I've done various things over the years afterwards, subsequently, in his name and so on, hands on for Madiba and so on. Here in Cape Town. But I've had a few personal moments with him. Ik had baie praat, man.
No, it's beautiful. So let's maybe, in fact, you spoke earlier about how tough the industry is, how tough it is to be a singer, a performer. Lots of people, it's glamorous.
Well, a lot of people would look at me and think I've got it made.
Yeah.
I had it made.
Yeah. But I mean, so what is the reality? Is it glamorous, or is it really tough?
It's only glamorous when you step onto that stage. Behind the scenes, I can promise you over the years, right? And I think this is one of the things that has kept me grounded all these years. I'm this year essentially, I'll be in this industry 44 years doing this. And what a blessing, when I think of all my peers that have gone. I mentioned the late TK earlier, Brenda. Wow, people who should have still been with us, And sometimes that's why I say, your God, I'm still here. That means I still have something to give, something to contribute, you know. But most certainly the glamour is wonderful when you're up there and you're made up and you're in costume and the lights and action. But the unglamorous part of it is having to get up at like oftentimes, I would have to get up at like 3 or 3:30 a.m. in the morning to get on a 6 a.m. flight to fly off somewhere to a gig in winter, summer. The fact that I was separated from both my children over the years for this career, the fact that I have been through now 2 marriages, didn't work out very successfully because the challenges and the pressure of having to be out there, and it's very challenging, but it is very rewarding, and I can honestly say that I wouldn't change a thing because I've thought about it. You know, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to maybe be a veterinary surgeon or a doctor. It obviously wasn't meant for me because what I realize now that through this glamorous, quote, unglamorous thing at times, I can't imagine doing something different because my career and my voice and my talent and whatever you want to call it as now, actually, it's like I've come full circle. And I see the benefit, the great benefit of having the ability to sing because it's so much more than just being a singer. It's about your character. And it's most certainly this industry has built my character against all odds. Times when, you know, something major happens in your life, like loss of some sort, or even like I mentioned, divorce and that. But if you've got the show must go on. You don't take your troubles up there with you. So it's a very harsh industry to be in at times because you've got to perform and you've got to leave everything there in the wings when you step out.
Yeah.
And it's one of my greatest blessings, I think, and gifts that I've learned how to manage that differently and better. And now I don't see it as I'm not an entertainer. Essentially, I'm a prophet because that's what visionaries are. You know, you prophesy into the future, into what you would like to see. And because of my spiritual grounding, my faith has always been, it's the thing that's kept me going. God and my faith in that has kept me going all these years. And now I can truly appreciate all those years of the glamour and sometimes the not glamorous sitting in the wings, you know, or sitting in the kitchen sometimes in a hotel when they don't have, you've got to stand by to go on stage and there's waiters up and down. And sometimes you're sitting in the venue or you're on stage and people are talking away and you're trying to do your thing, but you learn to navigate these things. And it's made me a better person being a performing artist. Or as I now know, I am a prophet of music.
So you've tried to do something about the industry to change it for the better. Are you still involved in the trade union?
I don't know. You know, I stepped down year before last September from Tumsa
It's called TUMSA, the trade union
for
for
musicians.
musicians in South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of talked around it and about it in 2017 already. Myself and my peers, it was Gabby LaRue, he was our general secretary, Camilo Lombard at the time, Ernestine Dean, Quentin Jitsvinger Goliath, the late Zami Mdingi, Janine Blackpool, Van
Van Rooyen, yeah.
and those were some of the founding members. What an experience that was, because it kind of took me back to my youth and my activist days. Now it just kind of, I'm stepping into the gap in the music industry for the voice of the voiceless in various portfolio committee meetings with Parliament, with government, with the Department of Labour and Employment to get musicians registered as workers, because that was a big battle. Of course, we were very closely aligned to COSATU, and they gave us a lot of our guiding principles. In fact, Tony Ehrenreich, Comrade Tony Ehrenreich was right in the beginning. He was a key person that advised us and assisted us on that journey. What a journey that was, Ryland. I stepped down, like I say, year before last, because it just became exhausting. To date, TUMSA has about 2,700 members nationally.
So you were the president or the deputy president?
The president.
President. Yeah.
Not by choice, eh? I was like, what? That day when they had the voting and like came to point it at me, I was like, president of a musicians union, what do I know about this? And yet I didn't know 5.5 years later. And now how many years later, nearly 8 years later, the journey and the things that I experienced on that journey was also part of the thing that's prepared me for what I'm going into now. And I've always been active, whether it's for the musicians or for the underprivileged or for our nation or for this continent. Somewhere deep down, I'll always raise my voice and try and use it to try and make a difference. That was a very big battle, and it's still very challenging for the creative sector. And I'm watching from the background now in a way. And in fact, I just spoke to a comrade who called me, in fact, on the weekend. He's from the South African Taxi Drivers Union. He started this thing, and they are recognized alongside the Domestic Workers Union. So we kind of, because we're the vulnerable sector. So he was asking me, and I'm supposed to meet him in Joburg now when I go, just for a little time. He's got something that he wants to propose to me, and it apparently involves My Afrikan Dream. So I'm quite excited to hear what he has to say. But it's in alignment with where I'm at in my life now, which is nation building, cohesion amongst the nations, our well-being, not just as South Africans, but as Africans. That is where the dream and the vision is focused on now.
Yeah. So maybe this is probably a good point to talk about. This year, you've got a milestone birthday, but you're also launching a major project that you're very excited about.
Yes.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about what is it all about?
Well, this thing kind of morphed from a various couple of experiences over the last 5 years where I was trying to, well, my management and I were trying to launch a Vicky Sampson thing, show, story, whatever. This has now become, this thing is very big actually, Ryland. It is still the story of the life of Vicky Sampson, my journey seen through the eyes of the African dream, but it is also part of what I was just saying earlier, which is part of bringing our nation together, addressing some of the ills that exist within this country and then within the continent, and finding solutions on the way forward. Very much focused on the youth and the development of that, the development and restructuring of our communities itself. I mean, for me, when I go back to Hanover Park now, it astounds me sometimes to see how much things have changed there. The psyche of the people. So the project that I'm busy with now is a very personal thing. It's part of my legacy program for the next few years. And it's something very exciting. I'm not at liberty to even mention the name of the show as such yet. But we are busy waiting on my first sponsor now to come back to us. And then also the proposal itself has been fine-tuned and honed. Proposal is ready to roll now to all the other potential sponsors out there. But it is a very, very big thing that is it's a 3-year initiative. And God willing, after that 3 years, it will then enable me to tackle the African thing, which is a very high up on my agenda when it comes to peace and restoration of our continent. This thing that I'm busy with now, the project itself, is an immediate term thing that I can tackle right now, with the foresight for what's to come. But it's music, and of course it's a celebration of our nation. It's a celebration of my life, of the journey I've walked alongside beautiful people that have come on my journey with me, alongside me, people that I've been mentored by essentially at times. But there's a very strong focus in the production itself on youth. I will be featuring a choir, I can tell you that. I've already identified my musical director. I've identified the songs. And there is a new song that still needs to be written for the production, because it's the coming out, if I can, of Vicky Sampson.
Fantastic. Do you think, obviously something like this, you would need to approach sponsors. You might have to approach government. Yeah. Do you think there's enough of an understanding at the government level and at the corporate level about the importance of arts and particularly music? I
absolutely don't think so. I don't think that they see the potential. And this was actually, I'm glad you've touched on this question, because it's still a very, I can actually feel it, I've spoken about this very point, in fact, a few times over the last week, funnily enough, including with this man I was talking about from the other union earlier. You know, Ryland, in round about 2021 or 22, not long after we'd formed the union, in fact, we did an organogram of the music industry with music as a central focal point. And what we did is we took then, okay, what else comes from music? What else does music impact? I don't think there's a department or a division of society that music does not impact somehow. And so if you look at the organogram collectively, the potential for the creative industry, which is dance, music, poetry, composition, in fact, all the people that come alongside, which is sound, lighting, technicians, the crew, the people that come and support the big shows and that thing is so huge, Ryland. And this is where some of my core focus is going to be on over this next 3 years with my project, is how to make the circle bigger now. Because I don't think government or the private business realizes what a solution this can be to youth that are sitting lost without a dream. Yes, we all want to, let's do a talent competition. And then what? What happens to these young people? So it's not enough to just identify talent, because talent is there. We know Cape Town is rife with talent across the board. I saw it when I was part of my NPC One Tree Development projects, sitting with 47 young people who didn't win the competitions, but who was so talented. And it was rap, it was hip hop, it was contemporary style of dance, it was more the hip hop style of dancing, it was even some poetry. My thing is, can we wake up as a nation to see the potential solutions that can be found within the collective creative industry? And not enough is being done, not enough is being, not enough time, and even now by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. It's wonderful when I see how much time and money by the private sector and government itself is invested in sport. Because of course we know what sport can do. But from where I'm sitting, it looks like, again, the creative industry is taking a step back and a seat back and waiting in the background for somebody to hear us, somebody to see us. And it's a big problem for me, because I don't feel that we're moving on from where we've been to where we should be going, because we have an exportable product, which is our creative industry. We've had the likes of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, the likes of Johnny Clegg, the likes of Maria Makeba, the likes of our very own Wouter Kellerman, that has won countless Grammys now. The likes of even Blacksmith Mambazo, who've won Grammys. The likes of Paul Simon, who came and did what he did, with that album, Graceland. Why is government not taking us seriously and seeing the solution? When I said it's not just about being a singer or a composer or a physical musician, it is more than that, because there are those other skills that are required within our industry, which is huge potential.
Yeah. So what do you think ordinary people can do to help put pressure on government and corporates to pay more respect to the sector?
Well, one of the things I think that could happen and should be happening is support of local artists. I don't like that word local. I never have, of South African artists, I will say. You don't hear Americans when they talk about their artists, or say, for instance, in Al Jarreau, wherever goes to a certain town or wherever city, or what do they call in their state? So Al Jarreau comes from his state to another state, and they say, oh, and one of our local artists. I hate that connotation, because then local doesn't become so lekker. And I've seen how artists battle here to get the support by the public to buy their little ticket of 100 Rand or 150 Rand, whatever it is. And then we flock to the international artist. I know it sounds like old sour grapes, but it's still very much a reality. The awareness amongst the public needs to change, and that's going to come from media, radio, supporting more artists on the airwaves, playing our music. We've seen the likes of the late Errol Dyers, the late Robbie Jansen, the late Bra Winston Mankunku, all those guys who created beautiful music that was not supported by our radios. How do people's awareness grow? Is by what they hear. More importantly, even on TV.
Yeah.
Hearing those artists' music. Why do we still have a problem when they would rather choose to play an international artist? than a South African artist. And some of the, even like a Jitsvinger, you know, Janine, she released an album, Black Pearl, beautiful music. Claire Phillips, our very own Claire Phillips. It's like you've got to scan between the dials and then maybe you're lucky to catch a South African artist. And it still feels like they're doing us a big favor. And that needs to change because you don't go to an America or a UK where they play predominantly South African music or from another country. They support their own. And I think just generally the public, media, business, government needs to get on board this journey now because the way I see it, the potential, like I said earlier, is massive to take young people off the streets and away from the wolves dressed in sheep clothing within our communities that are enticing them to have some sort of a sense of value and purpose. Rather join a gang because it gives you some sense of power.
Yeah. But I want to ask you, I mean, what is the thing that excites you most about where we are as a country today? And also in the same breath, what is the thing that has disappointed you most about where we are as a country today?
Is that a loaded question? No, I think, wow, Ryland. Let's start with what excites me. Yes, we know the challenges. Yes, we know that we are actually not in such a great position, you know, on the level as a country. But I think of the youth, they are the new tomorrow. I have a grandson who's 7 years old. You have grandchildren. That for me is the exciting part of where we stand now as a nation, the choices we make now as the elders of our community, of this country, in government, in civil society, etc., that we start raising our voices to actually say, you know what, yes, we have these issues, but what about the future for these young people? Where are they going? And that is why I'm investing in what I'm doing to become part of the solution and stop the moaning and complaining. But I know that I have some solutions. And it's in an industry that I've known all my life. I've invested years and years and years into that can be of a benefit to that new tomorrow that we speak about. On the back end of that, what saddens me and what disappoints me is that we are still sitting with the rhetoric of this corruption. Absolute, we can see what it's done to South Africa on so many levels that every SOE, there's not one that I can think of that has not been infiltrated by greed and corruption. And that is my thing. The saddest thing for me is that the legacy of the late Madiba, Oliver Tambo, Governor Mbeki, those people, Robert Sobukwe, all those people, Ashley Kriel, Anton Schmidt, those guys that came and walked the walk, died, sacrificed, gave up their lives, that we are sitting nearly 32 years down the line of our democracy. And it's like we've taken steps back, years and years. How do we now work through that backlog of corruption, chaos, and greed and arrogance? I think a lot of it stems from a sense of arrogance by certain people in powerful positions. They have not heard the people's cry. The people have not governed. There is something that needs to change, Ryland. I want to be part of that change.
So what kind of message would you, and this is my final question, what kind of message would you give to young people who might be inspired to follow in your footsteps?
I would say find something that can give you a sustainable income while you are on this walk. Then go and do the necessary. Go and study. Study music. Learn to play an instrument. Learn to write music so that you can own your IP, because that's another important thing. That even at this stage of my life that I'm learning that my real strength is going to lie in owning my copyright on my material, on my songs. So, and don't try and sound like someone else. Sound like yourself. Find your identity. We have so many beautiful stories as South Africans to tell. Young people have the ability now, they have so much more opportunities than we did actually with all these other platforms now via social media that they can become overnight sensations. But go and do your homework, firstly, and then don't be selfish and put yourself always there. You need to know if you're going to go into this industry, why are you doing it? Why do I want to become a famous person? Are you going to be of benefit to society, to your community, to your family? Or is it just about stardom? think about the long term, think about the big picture, because fame doesn't last, but humility does. Be humble and be proudly South African.
Thank you, Vicky, for coming and sharing with us your story, but also your views.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mobilearn, for your technical support. Thank you for the technical staff who work behind the scenes to make me look good. Please follow us on our socials on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and X. And also, if you think there are things that we could do better, please let us know. If there are guests that you think we should be getting into the studio, also please let us know. We definitely try to get them in here. My name is Ryland Fisher, and it's been my pleasure hosting Crossing the Line. Until we meet again, goodbye.